through the translator, looking at me through these clouded eyes of his, he said, the ark is a thing of fire. And that's when the story got its hook into me. Years ago, when I was tracing the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia, I had a long, pretty much off-the-record chat with the Israeli ambassador at that time. And I said to the Israeli ambassador to Ethiopia, and I said to him, come on, you guys have got Mossad. I mean, if the Ark is there, why don't you just go grab it? And he looked me straight in the eyes. He said, you know, that's the very last thing that we would want to do. For the Ark to be reintroduced into Israel right now would be a catastrophe for the world. Mm-hmm. So very happy for it to stay here.
What is some tangible evidence that the Ark still exists? What do we know?
Well, for me, it was an extended piece of historical detective work, because I haven't seen it. The Ark is kept in a sanctuary chapel in the grounds of the oldest Christian place of worship in Africa, which is the Church of St. Mary of Zion, in the city of Aksum. And the city of Aksum is itself an armed camp, the heartland of the Tigrayan people who overthrew the tyranny and the dictatorship of Mengistu Haile Mariam back in 1991. This was a barefoot army who overthrew the largest standing army in Africa. Wow. Their heartland is Aksum, and they are the guardians of the Ark. And there are men with guns everywhere around that sacred precinct. It is possible to go up to the gates of the chapel. It is possible to talk to the monk who guards the Ark. And I have done that. I've not talked only to one, because they have a very short lifespan, these monks who guard the Ark of the Covenant. Typically, once they're appointed to the guardianship of the Ark, they don't live more than 2 or 3 years. And very rapidly
What happens to them?
They go blind, they develop cataracts over their eyes. And when I asked the guardian, the first one that I met, about this, and about what was causing his blindness, he said it was the Ark that was doing it to him. And I said, why? And through the translator, looking at me through these clouded eyes of his, he said, the Ark is a thing of fire. And that's when the story got its hook into me, because there was truth in his words. And I do believe that the Ethiopians do have that object. And
so
I do believe it's the best place to be.
Perhaps?
Yes.
Radioactivity
This is strongly suggesting, as we know from the biblical accounts, still today we're looking at an object of immense power that is likely to be radioactive. Whether it's a kind of radioactivity we understand or something beyond our understanding, I'm not sure.
So how many people have lost their eyes like this?
Every single guardian that I met over a period of about 10 years, because I kept going back, all of them went blind.
Wow.
And they all said it was the Ark was doing it to them, and they all died within a few years.
And normally cataracts, like if you're in the highlands of Peru, you're closer to the sun, there's less atmosphere, there's more radiation hitting your eyes, and that's why these people are getting cataracts.
Yeah.
So radiation and cataracts, there is a relationship.
There is a relationship. Yeah, it's well known that there's a relationship. But for me, it was a detective work.
Wow.
It was tracing how the Ark really could have got to Ethiopia. We have the first temple, the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. It is built as an house of rest for the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. The Ark is placed in the Holy of Holies. Before that, it dominates the biblical story. There's more than 200 separate references to it. After it enters the Temple of Solomon, we hardly ever hear from it again. The mainstream view is that the Ark was looted from Jerusalem when the Babylonians sacked Jerusalem in 587 BC. They did take many temple treasures, but the Babylonians were notorious bureaucrats, and they kept a record of everything they took from Jerusalem, and included in that record is not the Ark of the Covenant. It isn't mentioned, and it isn't amongst the treasures that are returned to Jerusalem at the end of the exile, when the people of Israel go back to the Holy Land. The Ark, it seems to me, is missing from the temple before the Babylonian invasion. And that's when I found a very interesting episode of biblical history, which is the reign of a monarch called Manasseh, who is reviled in the Bible for abandoning the traditional Judaic faith and for installing in the Holy of Holies of the Temple of Solomon a pagan idol, which is an idol to the Canaanite goddess, a tree goddess called Asherah. And I talked to biblical scholars, particularly Menahem Haran at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and he said, look, I don't believe that those who were loyal to the traditional worship of Judaism could have allowed the Ark to stay in the Holy of Holies when Manasseh put the Asherah in there. It would have been ritually polluted. They had to take it out. The Levites who carried the Ark had to take it out of the temple at that point to save it from pollution. That was around 650 BC, and that's when I discovered in 650 BC, more or less exactly the same moment, a Jewish temple mysteriously is built on the island of Elephantina in Upper Egypt. This is a mystery. For another temple to be built in the first temple period outside of Israel,
right on that time,
cannot be explained unless that temple was built to house the Ark of the Covenant. So that's how I trace the Ark to southern Egypt, to Elephantina. Then around 400 BC, that temple on the island of Elephantina is destroyed. There's a conflict between the Jewish population of the island of Elephantina and the Egyptians. Why? Because the patron deity of Elephantina is Khnum, a ram-headed deity, and the Jewish population on the island of Elephantina are sacrificing rams. This is well documented. They are driven out. I believe they traveled south, followed the Nile River system, all the way to Lake Tana in Ethiopia. Cutting a long story short, I found an island on Lake Tana with an ancient tradition of the Ark of the Covenant. The monks there, they're Christians now, they said we were Jews then. The Ark was first brought here. They showed me ancient structures that had been part of the housing of the Ark on the island of Tana Kirkos. And then they said, when Ethiopia converted to Christianity, which it did around 200 years after Christ, one of the first countries to become Christian, the first Christian king, King Izana, sent his army to Lake Tana and took the Ark off to Aksum, and it's been in Aksum ever since. That's the argument. It's a trail of circumstantial evidence. There's more to it than that. We don't have time to go into it all now. Anyway, it's in my book, The Sign and the Seal. But I can't absolutely prove that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia, but I think Ethiopia has a stronger case than anywhere else. And it's the only place in the world which has a living tradition of veneration of the Ark of the Covenant to this day. Everywhere else, the Ark is a lost object, forgotten in the past. In Ethiopia, it's the center of religious culture, and weirdly, that's a Christian religious culture, venerating a pre-Christian relic. Every single church in Ethiopia has a replica of the Ark of the Covenant or of the tablets of stone in its Holy of Holies. And if that replica is removed, the church is deconsecrated, and it gains its sanctity by reference to the original Ark of the Covenant that they say they keep in Aksum. I think there's great merit to the Ethiopian claim, and I'm very glad that the Ark is hidden away in the highlands of Africa and not on the center of the world stage, causing chaos.